And so we are happy to say that this is certainly our first awards banquet, but it will not be our last. Now, with that being said, we had the opportunity over the past year to receive a variety of nominations. And I can tell you this, it was very difficult for us to make a choice in determining who was going to be our first award recipient. But before we talk about who that award recipient is, I'd like to mention several of the people that we believe need to be publicly recognized as honorable mentions. And we're going to start with Lead Investigator William Murray from the New York Office of Investigations and Internal Affairs, Sergeant Jennifer Pinal from the Arizona Department of Public Safety, Sergeant Nathan Pagel from the Rutherford County Sheriff's Office, Sergeant First Class James Morgan from the Georgia Department of Public Safety, Sergeant Mike Lane from Tempe Police Department, Captain James Cook from Amtrak Police Department. Now, these are all individuals whose supervisors and co-workers took a considerable amount of time and thought to contact the board and to write their thoughts about the exceptional job that these investigators did. So if we could just recognize those individuals publicly with a warm hand of applause. Now, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, this was definitely a difficult decision for us, but I think when I described to you some of the situations and some of the events that led to us choosing this year's award recipient, you will understand. The award recipient this year is a 32-year law enforcement veteran, is a sergeant in his agency's professional standards unit, and while he has served in that unit and his agency for years and years with exemplary service, we want to highlight a case specifically that he was involved in that started in November 2011 when an undocumented alien living in his city contacted this individual and alleged that one of the officers had taken money from him on several occasions in order to secure a temporary visa in the United States. Now, this year's award recipient met with the complainant and through several interactions determined there was validity to these allegations. Now, what was interesting about this case is that the complainant could not speak English. So this posed quite a few problems for this investigator. The language barrier caused significant difficulties in determining what had transpired between the subject officer and the complainant. The award recipient was extremely patient and attentive when conducting interviews, undercover operations, telephone conversations with the Spanish-speaking complainant. The award recipient arranged for translators to be available at a moment's notice to facilitate the different facets of the investigation. Now, due to the nature of the allegations against the subject officer, the complainant was understandably very reluctant to come forward with his complaint because not only was the target of the investigation a police officer, the complainant's own cultural biases made him fearful of all police officers. This year's award recipient was able to effectively communicate his true concern for the complainant's situation and was able to gain the trust of an individual who had never, ever trusted police officers. Because the complainant believed this year's award recipient was willing to help him, the complainant began to provide additional information that he initially was reluctant to give. This trust-building process took several months to culminate. Our award recipient this year continually provided support and proved to the complainant that he could be trusted, resulting in a successful investigation. Now, after many of the complainant's allegations were validated through our investigator award recipient, our award recipient planned and executed undercover telephone calls and meetings between the complainant and the subject officer. There were many difficulties in this process that had to be overcome. Directing the complainant through a translator, conducting an undercover operation involving a veteran police officer as the target, and the fact that some of the operations occurred while the subject officer was on duty. Our award recipient planned all of these issues and successfully conducted the undercover operations amidst all the difficulties presented. Now, probably the most impressive portion of the investigation was the interview of the subject officer. After enough evidence had been collected to indict this officer for 2 counts of felony theft in office, 2 counts of bribery, 1 felony count of tampering with records, the subject officer was questioned after being given his Miranda warning by our award recipient. The method in which our award recipient conducted the interview was nothing short of exemplary. His years of interviewing experience from his tenure with the homicide unit, the professional standards section, were evident to anyone observing the questioning. our award recipient was able to elicit confessions to many of the offenses that the subject officer had been charged with. It is important to recognize that our award recipient was interviewing a veteran police officer when he gained the confessions. He utilized numerous interviewing skills with ease and confidence. As with any undercover investigation, secrecy is paramount to a successful outcome. This is even more important when dealing with an undercover internal affairs operation. This year's award recipient was able to lead the investigation in such a way that over the 6-month span, no information regarding the investigation leaked to other members of the department, the media, or the citizens. Now, what is particularly impressive, and I think not only the quality of the investigation and the high-profile nature of the investigation, but as a result of this year's awards recipients' activity, they were able to build a trust with the Latino community that existed in their jurisdiction that previously had not existed. And as a result of that, several other complainants began to come forward who had also been victims of police misconduct and bribery situations as well. Our award recipient, who is receiving the award this year, he patiently handled each and every one of those cases and continues to work in building that status of trust. Now, as a result of all of the things that we have talked about thus far, we believe that all of these things in totality of circumstances, along with his exemplary character, his hard work ethic, and his willingness to overcome obstacles, and of course build trust and uphold the integrity of his agency and of the internal affairs profession, this year's National Internal Affairs Investigators Award is given to Sergeant Ventre.